One of the traditional and typical questions that a guy will say to another guy when he meets him for the first time is, so, what do you do? Now, from my experience of asking this question, it's never about competition or trying to prove that my job is better than yours. Instead, it's an opening question of genuine interest that will kind of then lead to a longer conversation about each other, about our jobs, and ultimately about our lives. Now, Monday we began looking at the parable of the talents and the idea that just as the talents were given to the servants by the master, so too faith and spiritual gifts are given to us by God. On Wednesday, we thought about the value of the talents, and in particular, the biblical teaching that the faith and the spiritual gifts that we're given testify to the fact that we are valued by God. We are valuable to God. Today, we come to the heart of the parable. And just like the question, what do you do? I want us to consider a spiritual alternative, which is, so what do you do with the faith and spiritual gifts that you're given? We'll pick up the parable immediately after the master's response to the first two servants. Matthew 25:24. The man who had received 1 talent also approached and said, Master, I know you. You're a harsh man, reaping what you haven't sown and gathering where you haven't scattered seed. So I was afraid and went off and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours. His master replied to him, You evil, lazy servant. If you knew that I reap where I haven't sown and gather where I haven't scattered, then you should have deposited my money with the bankers, and I would have received my money back with interest when I returned. So, take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have more than enough. But from the one who does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. And throw this good-for-nothing servant into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now, there will be a lot to unpack on Sunday because there are a few challenging aspects to this parable. However, the basic idea of the parable is a challenge to every believer to consider how we daily express our faith in Jesus. Okay, we just think about faith in general. Would you say that your faith in Jesus has grown exponentially since you first trusted in him? Now, if you've been a Christian for a long time, would you say your faith, your depth of faith has doubled in the last 10 years? Okay, now if you answer yes to both of those questions, what would you say is the reason for the depth of your faith? And how can you continue to grow in faith so that you don't stagnate? If you answered no to one or both of those questions, why is that the case? Let me ask the same question, but from the perspective of the parable. Okay, in terms of the 3 servants, would you say that your faith, okay, the depth of your faith and the way you express your faith, would you say that it is more like the first servant, the second servant, or the third servant? Let me ask the question again, only this time I'll consider the warning that is built into the parable. What do you want to hear Jesus say to you? Well done, good and faithful servant, or you evil, lazy servant. See, this is a parable that is urging you to personally consider how you express your faith in Jesus and to be challenged by your sinful inclination, which is to find excuses that stop you from working on your faith, stop you from sharing your faith, and stop you from using your spiritual gifts. So friends, with that sober warning in mind, why don't you take a couple of minutes to pray and ask God to help you to be like the first and second servants.